Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger is here. He is making news as an environmentalist. Note this cover story in Newsweek, Save the Planet or Else. He has put California on the forefront in dealing with health care. He has, many argue, changed his political colors from right to center. He calls himself a post-partisan. They used to say, if you want to see the future, go to California. Governor Schwarzenegger certainly believes that. His state has the world's sixth largest economy. He has gotten California to move its primary to February 5th so his state can have more influence in national politics. He is one of America's most popular politicians, but he can't be president because the Constitution says you must be a natural-born American. Some people want to change that so the governor of California can run. One thing is clear, he wants to play a national role. We are pleased to have him here on his Eastern swing. Welcome. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
What are you doing on our coast?
Well, I was in Washington yesterday at the Georgetown University at the lecture hall, talking about the environment, you know, the cover story of Newsweek. And I'm here today talking about the same thing, the same subject at the lunch. And it's about
the Council on Foreign Relations.
That's right, yes. So it's about really letting people know how important the issue is of the environment, and how it is actually in people's minds all the time, because when you look at the latest surveys, that and immigration are the two front runners when it comes to what people are most interested in and what people want to have fixed. Because more than 80% of the people know that global warming, have said that they believe that global warming is a serious problem and it ought to be fixed. And now the interesting thing, of course, is the changes that we have seen over the last few years, that now corporate America is demanding literally from the federal government that they should go and pass laws to set greenhouse gas emission standards once and for all, because they want to know where the future is. They want to participate and help along and fight global warming.
You think the president is listening?
I hope he is. I tell you, because America is not where it ought to be when it comes to fighting global warming. I think that there's some things that are done, but not fast enough and not enough. Period. And so I wish that the administration is doing more and is really stepping up to the plate.
What would you like them to do?
I think the same things as we have done in California. We have set very tough standards. We have basically said and committed by law that we're going to roll back our greenhouse gas emissions to the 1990 level by the year 2020. That's a reduction of 25% of greenhouse gases by the year 2020, and then an additional 80% below the 1990 level by the year 2050. So we are setting goals, because you have to set goals for way out in the future so we can make right decisions today. And I think that I signed also an executive order with the tailpipe emissions, with the carbon emissions, also again tough standards, which is again another thing that the federal government should do. Now the federal government has fought us on that particular issue on every step of the way, until just recently the Supreme Court has made it very clear that yes, tailpipe emissions is a pollutant, and yes, it ought to be regulated by the EPA. And now we are still waiting for a waiver from the EPA, from the federal EPA, in order for us to really implement that law. So it's really, I think the federal government just has to step up and say, we want to be leaders in America, we want to fight global warming, and we're going to go and inspire the rest of the world to do the same thing.
Someone said that Al Gore is the conscience of environmentalism, and you are the salesman.
That is a good team effort. Good teamwork. I like that. I think that Al Gore did a great job. I think there's so many environmentalists that should be on the cover as well. And Newsweek, also the people that have worked with me out in California, you know, if it is Senator Parada, Speaker Nunez, Fran Barfley, who was the author of a lot of those bills, to, you know, to really be tough on the environment and to start helping and roll back and fight global warming and so on. So, but Al Gore did a great job, and I was very happy that he won the Oscar for his Inconvenient Truth.
For the best documentary film.
Yeah, exactly. It was great, yeah.
What else are you doing in California, in inspiring business to be innovative and develop alternative fuels?
Well, I think that technology is the thing that really on the end will save the day. And what is so great about it today, you have, you know, the environment and businesses work together. I mean, every day there's new inventions of engines, of new engines. Like, for instance, Tesla Motors is a perfect example, as you know. It's a California car company. They've just started out. They developed the first car, which is the Tesla Roadster. And here they are. They're producing a car that is 100% electric. No emissions. No greenhouse emissions. Now, why is Detroit not able to do that? That is really the question. Here's a company that's just started out, and their cars have sold out the first version of. They're producing the second version. They will drop from the $100,000 to $50,000. So there's all kinds of great things that are happening with biofuel and with hydrogen highway that we are producing. They have hydrogen fuel stations all over California. We're even building it. We just made a deal with Canada to build it all the way up to Canada, where they will have the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, and all the way up to Alaska and so on. So there's many different things that we're doing. And corporate America, the financial community, is actually now putting new fuel into the environmental movement by really looking for green, clean technology, investing in green, clean technology. That's the latest thing. As you know, the internet and all of this built California's economy, especially in the Silicon Valley. Green, clean technology is the new wave of the economy.
And they're creating a lot of companies to take advantage of it.
Fantastic, yes.
What happened to your Hummers? Your Hummers?
Well, I proved that you can actually do both. That you can have a big Hummer, that you can have a big SUV. You don't have to get rid of those cars. All you have to do is change the technology. So I made one Hummer into a hydrogen-fueled Hummer and another Hummer into a biofueled Hummer. So, and that was what I was talking about in my speech.
Yes.
It is wrong to go and make people feel guilty about their SUVs, because you're not going to get rid of the SUVs, especially. I know my wife, and I know a lot of the moms out there that are driving 5 kids to school and stuff. They want to be protected by a big car. And, what we have to do is not get rid of those cars. What we have to do is get rid of those engines. What we have to do is get rid of the gasoline fuel, the fossil fuel engines, and produce biofuel engines, hydrogen-fueled engines, battery-fueled engines, because then there's less greenhouse gas emissions or none. With hydrogen, there's none. With battery, there's none. So that is really what we have to do. The same is with airplanes. Let's not complain about flying airplanes. Let's just build engines that are running on hydrogen fuel. I mean, the rocket that landed our man on the moon was hydrogen fueled. So why cannot airplanes fly on hydrogen fuel? So what we have to do is technology and environmental movement, and will save the day rather than making everyone feel guilty.
Have you been to Detroit and talked to them?
Oh, yes. I mean, as a matter of fact, I always had a good relationship with the General Motors, because they're the ones that built the H2 and the H3 and so on. And I told them way before I ran for governor, I already told them that the most important thing for them is to produce the Hummer with a hydrogen-fueled engine. And that's why they built one for me as a model, which then traveled all around the world to show that it can be done. And I hope that they're stepping up and doing it as fast as possible for the mass market now. And so we have had dialogue like this for quite some time.
In your role as sort of a national spokesman now for saving the planet, the Newsweek cover story, Save the Planet or Else, Arnold's Crusade, Green City Science and CO2, China's water crisis, a global carbon tax, which we'll talk about in a moment. There is also the notion here that you believe that environmentalism has to be sexy. You have to be passionate about it, not feeling guilty, as you suggested. Mm-hmm. In the same way, you draw an analogy with bodybuilding, how bodybuilding was kind of a cult thing, mm-hmm. and it moved into the mainstream.
That's right.
How do you do that?
Well, I think that, every movement starts out always, with some, extremists and fanatics and so on. It has to. But then you have to figure out, if you want to really popularize it, you have to then try to figure out, how do you now make it mainstream and make everyone become involved in it. And you remember, you were around in the 70s when we promoted Pumping Iron, yes. And when George Butler did the Pumping Iron documentary. And it was all meant to become more broad and to have a broader appeal. And what we did was, we did certain things, like, for instance, we would have an event at the Whitney Museum. Right. To have bodybuilders pose there and have, historians that were experts in art debate over other sculptors on their own body versus what other sculptors do in clay.
And all of a sudden, everybody's talking about bodybuilding and interested in it.
That's right. So what we did was, all of a sudden, painters like Jamie Wyeth and Andy Warhol painted me and right along with Nureyev and so on. So we attacked it from different angles, and all of a sudden, it became more and more popular. And especially when the movie and the book came out and so on. But the same thing is with the environment, the case. Instead of making just people feel guilty and make them all feel like, well, these are weird tree huggers, these are extremists. No, I think that global warming is a serious problem. We all see it, the science is in, the debate is over, as I always say. So now let us all go and participate. How do we participate? Well, you know, we all make decisions on what cars we buy. We make decisions on what airplanes to fly. We make decisions on how much electricity we are using, how much water we are using, what kind of bags we are buying when we go shopping, all of those kind of things. Let's go and now look at all of those things and evaluate it, and let's figure out how we can all work together and participate and do our own things and make it attractive for everyone rather than always make people just feel like, well, that's not for me, that's too extreme. It's not extreme. Everyone can do something, and we can fight together global warming.
All right, I may come back to that, but let's talk about health care. You've also made a lot of news because of what you're doing with healthcare. You want California to be in the forefront of showing the world and the country, especially the country, on a national basis, what can be done in healthcare. What's your plan?
Well, our plan is to insure everybody. Number one, the important thing is to know that in California, we never had a time when everyone was insured. We never had a time when insurance companies covered everyone, and that there is a joint responsibility in fixing that problem. And that's what we're trying to do now. What we are saying is there's mandatory insurance, that everyone has to have insurance. Number two, we want to have the insurance companies.
And if they don't have insurance, what happens?
Well, there will be consequences, because enforcement is very important. What the consequences are, we have to go and look at, like we did with car insurance, where, you know, when you don't have it, you have to pay a certain fee.
And if they can't afford health insurance?
Well, we take care of the people that are 250% and below the poverty level, the national poverty level. People that can't afford it, of course, we pay for that. But those that can afford it, there's a lot of people that can't afford health care and won't get it because they're 20 years old and they say, hey, I'm young, I would not have to go to the doctor, hospital, I'm not going to do anything. But then when they do, the fact is that there's 6.5 million people in California that are uninsured, and those that are insured have to pay for those that are uninsured. That's why we have a hidden tax. Everyone is paying a hidden tax with the amount of money you pay for your insurance, the out-of-pocket expenses when you go and buy things, the co-payments, everything. There's a hidden tax. As a matter of fact, the private businesses are paying $14.7 billion right now in a hidden tax that we can reduce if everyone gets insurance. So what we are saying is basically, let's insure everyone, and let's not have those that are insured pay for those that are uninsured.
And everyone you can do it without raising taxes in your judgment?
Oh, yes. Well, of course we can, because we are asking the employers to pay 4% of their wages that they're paying into a pool. We are asking the hospitals to put 4% of their money that they're making into a pool, and 2% that the doctors are making into that pool, and the federal government and the state. The federal government has already committed, the Bush administration has committed to $3.7 billion to put it in as matching funds, because they want us to have comprehensive health care to show that the states can take care of it themselves with the help of the federal government. And that's what we are trying to do. Everyone has to work together. It's a joint responsibility, from the employers to the hospitals to the doctors to the state to the federal government, the individuals. Everyone have to work together on this.
Immigration. You mentioned immigration is one of those issues where you got to show leadership. Mm-hmm. What are you doing on immigration?
Well, we can't do much about immigration because it's a federal issue.
Right.
What we can
but
do
you
is
have a lot of immigrants.
We have a lot of immigrants and a lot of illegal immigrants. Right. And so what we are trying to do is have the federal government, push the federal government, and ask them to solve the problem once and for all, because this has been going on now for many, many years, as you know, where we have this problem where people are crossing the borders, where people are working illegally, living in California or all over the United States illegally. And I think the federal government can do something about that. What they can do is they can reform the system, comprehensive reform, so we can legally bring in people to work from the outside. If we don't find the workforce in here, then you know these people, their background is checked, you know who they are, they can open bank accounts here, they can have a driver's license legally here, they can work legally, they're insured legally. Everything is done the right way, rather than what it is now. Everything is under the table.
This is an area where the president probably is more responsive than the other issues with respect to California's arguments.
Oh, absolutely. I think he has been terrific on that issue, and he has been pushing for a comprehensive immigration reform. And where he is at and where I'm at, we are very close on those things. The same is with McCain and with Kennedy. There's a lot of people that are wanting to move this forward, but there's a lot of extremists and there's a lot of conservatives that feel differently about all this.
There's also, in terms of California, California's been a leader in this area in terms of stem cell. It was on a referendum for the state. You created, what, $3-4 billion to build a stem cell research center. I'm not sure where the status is right now. The president may see new legislation which he may veto. Where do you stand on stem cell research and the potential of it?
Well, I think that California, as you know, we are the leader in a lot of things. And we are also the leader in stem cell research, and I'm very proud of that. I was very proud when Bob Klein was really putting this initiative on the ballot. It was Proposition 71. I was behind it 100%, and I told the voters they should vote for it because it's very important that we do something about that. There's a lot of people, including my father-in-law, who has Alzheimer's.
Right. Sergeant
Schreiber, that's right. That we go and find a cure for those problems. There's so many people that are suffering, and I think all we have to do is just put the money behind it and get all the best scientists together from all over the world and work on that. Well, the federal government hasn't done that because of some religious beliefs or because they're beholden maybe to some people in a religious community.
And so what do you say to the president on that issue?
Well, I think that what we have done is we've made a commitment of $3 billion, like you said, to say, okay, let's use this $3 billion and let's find the cures. Now, it will be much better, of course, when the whole country, when the federal government also participates and says, we are also committed. As Americans, we are committed to finding a cure
and
for all
we'll provide research grants for people all over
and
America to engage in their research.
Exactly. The Bush administration has gone to a certain level. So it's not that they have not done anything.
Right.
They've gone to a certain level, but they ought to go all out. But as you know, with all of those things, it's a matter of opinion. President Bush thinks differently about it. Other people feel differently. I feel very strongly that we should go all out because we have a chance to find a cure very quickly within the next 10 years and then solve all of those kind of illnesses.
Do you find yourself more at odds with the president, more so than you've ever been?
No, I don't think so. I think that it's maybe highlighted in the press more when you're at odds than when you're in sync.
Well, we talked about the environment, we talked about health care, immigration, you're with him.
Stem
cell, you're separate. The war, you are favor of some designated time for troop withdrawal.
Right. But, you know, there's education issues, there's transportation issues, there's a lot of foreign policy issues and a lot of kind of things, the help that we're getting as a state with our levies and so on and so forth. There's a lot of things where we work together on homeland security. We have a great relationship with, Chertoff, with the Secretary Chertoff, and all of this. But there is a lot of things also at the same time where I feel that the federal government and the Bush administration can go beyond of where they have gone, and I wish that they would.
People look at your political career, and they see a kind of evolution. You know, when the special election was called, they said you ran to the right to get elected. Then, because you had opposition from both right and center, then they said you had some difficulties, were not popular, and began to move back to the center and almost have adopted a democratic agenda.
Well, first of all, when I ran for governor, I said I would be the governor of the people, meaning that I would represent Democrats, Republicans, independents, and decline to state people.
But in the beginning, a lot of Democrats and people to center-left didn't think you were representing them.
Well, no, they did, because remember that right after I was elected, we, for instance, promoted stem cell research, which was considered a more democratic idea. So people were kind of shocked. What does that mean? But at the same time, I said, I'm not going to raise taxes. So it was a combination. I don't look at issues if they're Democratic issues or Republican issues. And I think the reason for it is because I'm not a typical politician. All I want to do is just fix problems. Now, along the way of fixing problems and doing the work for the people and be the public servant, I've also made mistakes. The mistakes were that sometimes I went too far to the right and not include people.
What's an example of that?
Well, for instance, I have said that let's go and reform education, merit pay. Let's give, people, the teachers must have, more time in order to prove to us that they're really capable of having a lifetime job and a guarantee for lifetime as a teacher and so on. Well, those things, instead of there's just two examples, for instance, order to redo, the pension. Instead of bringing the stakeholders in and talking with them and negotiating with them, Well, the legislators were in, but I mean, everyone needs to be brought to the table, like we're doing now in healthcare reform, or as we are doing with all those other, with environmental issues and so on, where we're bringing the oil company executives in, where we're bringing the business leaders in, and the labor leaders and everyone. That I did not do. And there was a big mistake because what I did was I came from the private sector where things go much faster, and I said, look, in 2 months, if we don't come to an agreement, I will go directly to the people. I circumvent the legislature, and you become irrelevant. Yeah. That was a mistake.
You sort of had it my way or the
highway.
Exactly,
and so I learned from that. The people all voted no on those initiatives, and they sent me a message, and they basically said, look, we sent you to Sacramento to change things, not like in the Davis administration. Change and work together with both of the parties, and that's what I did since then.
So what's remarkable about this, in the judgment of many political people, is that you listen. In other words, here's a guy who came to public office, having not had a lifetime career in politics, but someone who had shown remarkable skills in a variety of ways, and you were listening. All of a sudden, you said, I'm making some mistakes here. I got it. You got a political education in office, and you recognized it early enough.
Well, Charlie, let me tell you something. That the bottom line is we all make mistakes, and it's an on-the-job training. There's no school where you say, okay, here is the way you run a state. I go in there, and I learned very quickly certain things, and it is very important to right away let the people know. I said, look, I made those mistakes, and now we're going to change because you sent me a very clear message, and that's exactly what we've done, because I ultimately want to serve the people of California. I'm their public servant.
But you seem to have somehow understood exactly where California wanted to go.
Right.
I mean, you got the sense of where they wanted to be on the environment, where they wanted to be. You figured out their long-term inclinations.
Right, but I'm very quick on my feet. So I mean, it doesn't take that long to figure it out.
They didn't have to say, damn it.
No, not at all.
You got it. He said, when the polls went down, he said, I got it.
And it's great to learn and then to go and make the adjustments. And you know something? Yeah. I tell you, the legislators that we have in California, I mean, it's really fantastic. I mean, we don't agree all on issues. But it's great. They have looked at that period and they said, okay, that's the way Arnold was then. Yeah. Now he wants to work with us. We are ready to work with him. And they all came together. And last year, an election year, we lowered the prescription drugs by 60%. We increased the minimum wage. We passed AB 32 to roll back the greenhouse gas emissions, the Ocean Action Plan, the Million Solar Roof Initiative. We passed the budget on time for the first time in 6 years, and on and on and on. All of this was done in 1 year. So we have a great momentum going there in California.
And at your inauguration, you had Willie Brown as the MC.
Well, he has been my friend for a long time, even though he fought me in the first election. I remember in 2003 when he came out and says, we Democrats, we're going to terminate the Terminator, and all of those things. And I laughed about it always. And he and I, we have been friends for a long time, but he has been very helpful.
In understanding Democrats and understanding consensus building.
Well, for me, it's not that difficult to figure out Democrats. I sleep with one every night.
Yes.
I've been married to Maria for 21 years.
What role does she play?
Maria has been an extraordinary partner. She has been an extraordinary partner way back in bodybuilding when I met her in the late 70s. She has been an extraordinary partner in the movie business by helping me read the scripts and pick directors and producers in which studio to work with and all of those kind of things. Even with dialogue, rewriting dialogue, she had great suggestions and all this. And even now, of course, I have to say she's not very happy.
Why?
About the fact that I'm in politics. Because when I told her, I remember 3.5 years ago, I said, Maria, I'm running for governor. I mean, she broke up in sweat. I mean, she said, no, don't do this to me.
Now, why did she want to do it? Because she knew what a political life was like?
Yes. She comes from a political family.
You can say that again.
She has been kind of dragged in as a kid into this whole thing of with the photos and having to behave a certain way and going to trips and going to the White House and going to this and that and with the Peace Corps, traveling all over and being the perfect example. They have to work in the Peace Corps and all. So she didn't want to be, again in that game.
Right.
And so for her to make this sacrifice that she's making now and to come to me and says, look, Aunt, you have to do what is in your belly, what is in your heart. I know you feel very passionate about giving back to the state of California that has given you everything. So she says, if you want to do that, I will be your partner. I mean, that's what she said on it. But even though I knew she would not be happy, but, it was so much in me that here was my opportunity. There was a recall election, and I felt like I wanted to get out of the movie business. I have done enough of that. It's time to change. I want to give something back to California. I felt passionate that I can change the state and bring it back again and make it healthy and number one again. And so I went in there, and luckily I won. And since then, I've been having the greatest time.
But her role seems to have increased, i.e., there was a sense that she went forward at the time that you were under fire and was out there for you as a bridge.
She has been there from day one. She has been an extraordinary partner. And let me tell you something. If it is environmental issues where she gives me great recommendations and suggestions, if it is with economic things, if it is with anything, healthcare, whatever it is, we talk about all of those things. And what the people have gotten is with us too is a great partnership. She's not the first lady.
Two for the price of one.
Exactly. She's not the first lady that goes to ribbon cutting things. She's not the first lady that goes to funerals and stuff like that. That's not. Maria is a very, very smart woman. And she's very well trained, and she has a great background. She has been involved long enough in media also with all of these great things, and her great skill of learning quickly and being such an avid reader. I mean, she reads and reads and reads everything, and is also great with history and so on. So, I mean, I couldn't have a better partner.
So you're saying in this political journey you've taken, she's been one of the primary influences in terms of...
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, look, we help each other so much. I mean, her work, what she's doing, she always comes to me and asks, what do you think about this? And I give her advice. She's giving me advice. We talk about a lot of the things, and we make decisions together.
California sends $1 to Washington. It gets back 79 cents. Can you change that?
Well, we have. I mean, I was very happy that we have changed a lot of it, but not enough. I mean, we are getting now $7 billion more than we've gotten when I took office. But I want to move that up. There was a time during the Clinton administration, first term, where California got 95 cents to the dollar. And I want to get us back to that point as much as possible.
How do you do that?
Well, I think the most important thing is that who we elect now as next president. And this is why we moved the primary
to February 5th.
To February 5th, so that California becomes a major player now in this whole thing. And now we want to make sure that we grill those candidates and find out exactly what is your opinion about California getting
paid more money.
Where do you stand
on California issues?
Where do you stand on that specific issue? Should California get more money or not? We want to ask those candidates, what do you feel about the environment? What would you do if you become president in order to really get us off fossil fuel? Because since Eisenhower, they've been talking about getting us off fossil fuel, and that the Middle East, we're always too much relying on the Middle East, and still we're not off fossil fuel. 97% of our energy comes from fossil fuel. That's ridiculous. We got to go and make a goal and say, by 2020, we're going to reduce by 10% the fossil fuel usage, and then another 10%, another 10%. Let us go. So those are the kind of issues we want to ask those candidates, rather than just talking about one issue, which is Iraq, or about personalities and personal things. Let's talk about those issues.
Will you endorse a Republican candidate?
Yes.
Nominee?
Well, we are lucky that we have...
I don't mean candidate in the general election. I mean in the primary.
We have a very... I don't know if I would endorse anyone before the primary or not. It could be, but I mean, I don't think so, because if I pit one against the other, I think we have some good candidates out there amongst the Republicans. I think the Democrats have some good candidates out there, and I think that people have some good choices there.
You have seen... I mean, McCain seems to be stalled right now. He's struggling to redefine his campaign. He's close to you. You like him.
Yes.
Is he of the people who are running now, who's closest to where you think they are, where you are?
Well, I think that both, I think Giuliani and McCain are very close, because they're both...
Those are your kind of Republicans.
Well, they're in the center. They both talk about the environment, and they're not extremists. They, kind of the closest to where I am. And so I don't know Romney that well, but I think he has done a great job as a Republican to go and fight for universal health care. Right. He did a great job with that, how he brought both of the parties together. So I think all three candidates are really very appealing candidates, and they have a great shot. And now it's just a matter of time to watch them, how this whole thing will unfold.
You think Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, should run as an independent?
I think he will be an interesting choice, and I think that he has done such an extraordinary job here in New York that I think he is looked on as an idol by a lot of mayors because he has done such a miraculous job in a town that is so democratic, and he's a Republican, that he was able to adjust and to really be a servant to New Yorkers. I think everyone looks up to him.
He's interesting, and you're interesting because he came to politics from business.
Right.
We're taping this in a building that his company is a principal tenant. You came to politics from the movie business and as a businessman. Mm-hmm. Tell me, does that make a difference? Do you think you two guys brought something different? And how do you see the role you have now and the role you had earlier?
Well, I think that there's a difference because I, many times, don't really know the political consequences of things because I'm not trained in politics. I didn't grow up. I didn't work my way up the halls of Sacramento.
So you don't think about the political consequences when you look at a decision?
No. I look at many times people come to me afterwards and she says, this is going to be a rough one with the Republicans, with your base. I hope you're aware of that. And I say, well, yes. I'm not aware of it, but something, that is the right decision. We got to go, and I'm glad I didn't know that, so I don't get influenced by that, because I got to go and serve the people. The people want to have things. They want to fix the levees. They want to fix the roads. We want to rebuild California. Things need to be done, and we got to be environmentally friendly, and whatever the issues are. I make those decisions based on what is right for the state rather than what is right for politics. And that's why I always say I'm a public servant and not a political servant or a party servant.
As you have moved to the center and to post-partisanship, as you say, post-partisan Republican or post-partisan politician,
right.
Whatever that means, but I think we've been defining what it means. Have you lost the right?
Not at all. I think that it's very clear that they're behind me. Just recently a poll came out again where a huge majority of Republicans are actually voting and are all for the issues that I'm fighting for. The environment, health care, bringing the state back with the economy, rebuilding the state, all of those issues, they are for the huge majority of Republicans and a huge majority of Democrats. So that is really, for me, the greatest pleasure.
Okay, are you saying, though, do you think your California experience says to the country at large, we need, as a country, to find some common ground where we are doing a lot of problem solving and we're more in touch with where the people want to be? Because there is a discontent with politics in many sections of the country and with national leadership because they don't think they're solving problems and they don't think they're taking the country in the right direction.
You hit the nail on the head. I swear to you, because that's exactly what the people feel. No, I'm telling you, look at the poll. In California, when I took over, 2/3 of the people were against where the state is heading. Now, 2/3 of the people are for where the state is heading. So that has changed. Why? Because they say they're getting along. The governor and the legislators are all working together.
And he's not partisan, and he's reaching out to both sides because he knows he'll never get anything done unless he can bring them together.
That's right. Now, on a federal level, when you look at Washington, the people in the whole United States, when you look at the poll numbers, they say 2/3 of the people, as a matter of fact, 70% of the people are saying that we're going in the wrong direction. That just shows you because they only see fighting, and fighting. And what has happened now that the new leadership is in Congress, is in power, 100 days have gone past. What has been accomplished? What bill has the president signed?
You tell me, what bill has he signed?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing
and
was
those
signed.
that are working their way through Congress, he says he's going to veto.
So imagine now what that means to the people. People are frustrated. People in America are angry, and this is why 70% of them say we are going in the wrong direction, unlike in California, where 2/3 of the people say, yes, we're going in the right direction.
All right, but just take that. Let's assume that part of what you're saying is that, look at California, this is the direction the country ought to go. What role do you play on the national scene? I mean, you're obviously a national politician. Look at this cover story.
Well, this
you're
is
obviously a national politician because you're meeting here with the governor, the Democratic governor of New York. You had lunch with or something.
Dinner with last night, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had a wonderful discussion, Spitzer and I.
What was the discussion about? Tell me what the kinds of things that the governor of California and the governor of New York, two largest states, one a liberal Democrat, one a centrist Republican, talk about.
Well, we had it off right away when we met, right. Because he wants to accomplish things regardless of if it's a Democratic idea or Republican idea. He wants to fix things. There's certain things that certain problems that New York has that need to be fixed. There's certain problems that California has that need to be fixed. And certain things that need to be fixed also have, problems that the rest of the states have and need to be fixed. So can we inspire? The question really is, can we this great state of the East Coast, and the great state of the West Coast, if we together do things, if it's healthcare, if it is environmental issues or anything, infrastructure, whatever it is, can we maybe inspire the rest of the states to follow and to become partners of ours, and we don't have to wait for the federal government to make their decisions. So that's the idea. We met about that because he is very eager to take on big problems of New York, and I was always very eager to take on big problems in California.
Okay, and how do you do that? I mean, do you do that through, what vehicle do you do that with, other than a national debate?
Well, no, but sharing, first of all, information, helping each other, the things that he accomplishes. He can send people out to California and give us advice on how to do the same thing that he has done when something is done well, rather than redesigning the wheel. The same thing is with us. We've done certain things environmentally. We can share that information and send the experts to him so that they can learn from that, and we can move together and then do press conferences together to put the spotlight on certain issues. And again, what works there is that he's a Democrat and I'm a Republican. We sell always the idea that this has nothing to do about parties. It has nothing to do about ideology. Let us just fix the problems. There's serious problems that we face in this country, and we got to go and fix them and get along. Let's meet in the middle. Let's not be extremists on the right and extremists on the left. Let us get together and fix things and work together with the president on those issues.
He's also got one smart wife at his side as well.
Oh, yes, a very good partner.
A lawyer,
yes, yeah. That's absolutely right, yeah.
But
let me tell you, he's a great guy. I mean, I had a wonderful conversation, and we see eye to eye on so many of those issues, and I'm looking forward to working with him together because I think that we can do a lot of great work together by him on the East Coast and we on the West Coast, and kind of letting the rest of the country see what can be accomplished if we work together.
Do you think the war has distracted us from looking at the kinds of problems that we ought to be dealing with?
Absolutely, and I think that it's a big mistake that the press is making. The press is making that to always just put that out there as the only issue. I think it is very important for
Newsweek magazine is the environment.
Absolutely. I'm not saying that's the only thing, but I mean, I think that when I turn on television at night, I barely get the feeling of that I get to know what Barack Obama stands for, or what Hillary Clinton is selling lately, or what Rudy Giuliani is pushing, or what policy. I always hear just the reaction about the Iraqi war and all of those kind of things.
Or where they stand in the horse race, or how much money they've raised.
Exactly. I think that it is important to let people know about Iraq, but not make this the only issue, because it's a very important issue, and important because we're having so many people lose their lives over there, of our brave soldiers that are overseas, and also, it's a very controversial war. So yes, we have to cover that, but I think we got to go into the issues of those candidates. What do they stand for? Because otherwise you're shortchanging the people of America, and they will not be able to make a decision beyond, do I like this candidate or do I not like this candidate? We got to go beyond that.
Where do they stand on issues? And the issues they ought to be talking about: environment, global warming,
that's right,
climate change, health care, full coverage for every American,
immigration,
infrastructure,
exactly.
The status of our highways and buildings.
We want to know about those issues.
Urban planning and the quality of life in our urban environment.
That's right. It's about the quality of life of people. I mean, that's our responsibility as public servants, is to make the lives of people better. One issue that is here in America is poverty. Too many people are poor in this country. America has been very, very good to you, good to me as well. What is our obligation, and how do we have a debate about the divide between haves and have-nots in our country, both of which exist in large numbers in California? Some of the richest people in America, some of the poorest people. Right. Well, I think that, way back when I first came over here and I became successful, I felt very strongly that everyone has an opportunity here in America to become successful. I was convinced, because I said to myself, if a farm boy from Austria comes over here, a bodybuilder, and then all of a sudden I make millions of dollars, I'm successful in real estate and movie business, whatever I do, then anyone can do it. But the fact of the matter is that when I got into it, and I started getting involved with Special Olympics, and I started getting involved with after-school programs and with all of those kind of things, and got into the trenches and working with kids, I recognized that that is not the case, that not everyone has the same opportunities, that not everyone had the kind of parents that I had that motivated me when I was a kid. Even though we had nothing, we were poor, but we had the motivation from the parents. You know, you're great, you can make it, you're going to be big in life, and all of those kind of things. There's so many kids that never have that. They have parents that are on drugs. They have parents that are split up. There's dysfunctional families and all of those things. So I recognize that, yes, government has a role in the whole thing. So now the debate is always, and has been for many, many, centuries, about what is the role of government. How far should government go? And there's this whole thing. Should you go and feed people, or should you go and teach them how to fish so they can feed themselves?
Exactly.
And this is this fine line, and this is a debate that will go on forever. I think, like, for instance, with our healthcare, we say that people that are in 250% poverty or below should get healthcare for free. Someone else may argue and says, no, you should move that number up to 300% or 350%. So
but that's an argument with numbers, not
exactly,
purpose.
But I believe that government has a definite function and a responsibility. It has a much bigger responsibility than I ever thought when it comes to education, also to after-school programs, preschool programs, school things. All of those kind of things. Government is very important and plays a very important role in this, because more than 50% of the children are now coming from homes where both of the parents are working, or where the single parent is working and there's no one home alone. That's what it is in the afternoon. So who is going to help those kids with the homework? Who is tutoring those kids when they fall behind in a subject? Who is giving those kids, where English is a second language, their information and teaching them so they can get up to speed in education? Who is giving those kids a hug and say, you are great, you're going to make it, be tough and keep working on it, you're a winner, and so on. Someone has to. So we in government have to take on that responsibility, so we can supplement of when the parents go to work, so they don't have to worry about their kids getting involved with gangs and violence and drugs and teenage pregnancy and all of those kind of things.
Finally, the LA Times has editorialized that the Constitution should be changed. Would you support that idea?
I think that it should be changed, but it is not for selfish reasons. Exactly.
Yeah, it's because of so many people who come here, fall in love with America, and can serve the country.
That's right. And I think I call it always, it should be part of the comprehensive immigration reform.
That's good.
You like that, huh?
I do. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Good. Arnold Schwarzenegger and I have known each other since you first came here.
That's right.
Spent the night at my house in Washington when
Absolutely,
you were
yes. And,
going around promoting pumping iron.
And you've been after my case because I didn't make the bed ever since.
Exactly right. Got left without making the bed.
That's right, yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Back in a moment. Stay with us.